And we are live, so you can start when you're ready.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to our curriculum meeting this evening. As you all know, the time was changed. That was Dr. Winter's recommendation. The last meeting we had, we went over a little bit, and then it takes a few moments to get from one Zoom to another Zoom. And so Dr. Winters came up with a very good idea of having it early in case we go a few minutes over, gives us some time for transition and then some time in between. So we're going to try it at that going forward then, right? Dr. Winters, like to see how this time works. So tonight, Dr. Winters is going to be, all of us have a lot of questions about what it's going to look like for when school starts back up. So Dr. Winters is going to address those things. What is our curriculum meetings going to look like, going forward? And what is curriculum and academics going to look like? And as we all know, we're getting a lot of information from the state about, the guidelines and what's going to happen. And because the virus is still there, so we don't know what that's even going to look like in the fall, but Dr. Winters is going to address that and tell us about the plan for the district. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. McClendon. I'm going to go ahead and screen share to put the agenda up so that everybody on this call and also those viewing at home can see the agenda. We go. So thank you, Dr. McClendon. Thank you to everybody who is viewing and participating in the meeting from home. We appreciate everybody being in attendance this evening. I wanted to start off, just kind of take a few minutes and talk about this committee and our logistics in terms of moving into the 2021 school year and what that may look like, because there will be some changes depending upon when August rolls around, whether Berks County is in the yellow phase or whether we're in the green phase. We do not have a curriculum committee meeting in July. July, there is only one board meeting. It's a voting meeting. And so we get a break in July. So if we are in yellow come August, then the format that we're using now for curriculum committee meeting will be the same format that we'll continue to use. We'll continue to meet via Zoom. We'll continue to record the meetings, live stream the meetings, and do them as we have been doing them. Because in the yellow phase, the guidance and the recommendations that we're receiving from the governor and from PDE is to do as much remotely as we possibly can. If we are in the green phase come August, and I think many of us, if not all of us, are keeping our fingers crossed that that's the case, then we would be able to begin meeting in person again for these committee meetings. And so time-wise, as Dr. McClendon mentioned when she started the meeting, I've made the suggestion that we consider moving forward tonight and beyond, that we hold these meetings at 5 o'clock as opposed to 6, whether we're doing them via Zoom or whether we're doing them face-to-face. I think there's value in that for a couple of reasons. One, it gives us a bit of a buffer. Some meetings we have no problem getting done in an hour. Other meetings, because of the nature of the content, we need to go a little bit longer. I felt badly in our May meeting that a number of our teachers that were presenting some of the best instructional practices, they got cut short because we simply ran out of time because we were right up against the board meeting that followed. So by putting these meetings at 5, it'll allow us a little bit of a buffer if we need a little bit longer than an hour to have that time to be able to do so. And the other thing it does is, for those of us that attend both meetings, both this meeting and the board meeting, there's a little bit of time to kind of regroup and kind of get prepared for that meeting for folks that may be planning on doing both. So that's some of the rationale behind the recommended time change as we move forward. I did, for your information, put on the agenda the current scheduled dates for the curriculum committee meetings through December. And so that way, if you want to go ahead and get them on your calendar and plan for them, you have them. With a new superintendent coming on board and with the school board reorganizing every December, there may potentially be some changes in terms of when curriculum committee may meet as we head into the second half of next year, but we don't know that yet, and we wouldn't look to make any changes until we go through that transition, both of a new superintendent and the board reorganization, which always happens in December. So, but for now, for the first half of next year, those are the dates, 5 o'clock, time for those meetings. And we will always strive to keep the meetings at an hour, but we may go over a little bit. Any questions about any of those logistical pieces in terms of what meetings will look like in yellow versus green, time, dates, any of those kinds of things? Okay, terrific. I thought it would be helpful going into the meeting tonight just to share with everybody what some of the preliminary thinking and brainstorming is around 2021 and instructional preparations, and making sure that we're ready to resume school, whether we're in yellow or green, and what that might look like. I think it's important to say, as I enter into this discussion and this information, that right now we are very much focusing on thinking and brainstorming. A lot of people have a lot of really great ideas. Our principals have shared some wonderful ideas, district administrators, coaches, teachers, and we're looking at all of that, and we're viewing all of that through the lens of all of the information that's coming to us from the governor and from PDE. We now have reopening guidance from BCIU, reentry plans, job-alike groups are meeting to talk through those things, HR, business, teaching and learning, etc. And one of the things that will occur is that there will be a district level task force that will begin to take a look at everything we need to consider in terms of reopening in the fall in whatever format that looks like. Things like building logistics, health and safety plans, how we're going to handle transportation, how we're going to handle food services, athletics. There are lots of pieces to that. That task force will start working heavily in earnest in July. And then some of those plans will start to crystallize in terms of a larger task force and then subcommittee work. But what I wanted to share with you tonight is a little bit about some of the academic or what I'm going to refer to as the teaching and learning pieces, things that we're thinking about and steps that are already being taken or will be taken to account for that. One of the things that we talk about just about every year is this idea of, a summer slide or a summer regression, and, what kinds of things can we as a district do to help ensure that we mitigate that regression as best we can. And, we do a good job. There's always room for growth, but never before has this regression been more important than entering this summer. With having to educate students for 3 months in a pandemic and knowing that our students are behind, we really have to take a look at things we can do. One of the phrases you're going to hear out there, instead of summer slide, people are calling it the pandemic plunge. I'm not sure who coined that exactly, but that is something that is out there and something that you're going to hear about. One thing that we've done as a district, and I'm going to shift over to a different Google Docs so that everybody can see it, is a summer resources document. And basically what this document provides for our families is information about Schoology, the different portal pages that families can access with information by building. And then we have resources broken down in terms of resources that families can access at home, summer reading lists, RAS Kids, the digital library for grades 7 and 8, tool called Overdrive, the Exeter Community Library website, Scholastic, Newsela, Text Twist, Wacky Web Tales, Fun English Games, English Maven, just some different resources that are out there on the ELA and literacy side that students can access from home. All of our students still have their laptops and their devices. We did not, we only collected them from seniors. Every other child kept theirs through the summer. And there is tech support for students if something is not working well with their computer, as well as our IT department does have additional laptops if families find that they need one. In addition to the literacy resources, math resources as well. We've been using Dreambox in the K-4 grade levels. There's a link to how students and families can access Dreambox from home based on what building they're in, as well as IXL for students in grades 5 through 8. There are some Pearson resources as well. Pearson is the company we use for investigations. And then Khan Academy is here, which continues to be a great resource for math that is completely free. It's got videos, all kinds of pieces. We have a section for general resources as well, some things that relate to current events, science, etc. This will be going out as a parent link message and attachment to our families so that they have access to this and can use it over the summer. We'll also put it on our website and make it available in other outlets as well so that folks have that. So this is one thing that we provide for families. We did it last year as well. It's something that we provide every year that families can access. Another piece that helps with this summer regression is Tips Live. Mr. Hathaway has been in previous board meetings a couple weeks back talking about Tips Live, what that's going to look like, what can be offered for families over the summer. The agreement is on the board agenda for the month of June to be discussed tonight and then voted on next week. And this is basically a live version, an online version of Tips to try to still support families that want to participate in that. There is funding set aside for our Title I students so that some of our neediest kids that want to participate in Tips Live are able to do so. Not only did we budget money through our Title I grant, but Tips has also added some additional money to make sure that our neediest kids that want it can get access to it. There are other scholarships that are always offered to families as well. So that's another resource that is available this summer, focusing on literacy and math. That is something that will be available for families if it's something they want to take advantage of. And that has been publicized. It's been on the district Facebook page. Teachers helped promote it. It's been on it's been on the Exeter Cares page, I believe, as well. So, we have made an effort to get that out there and make people aware of that. The other piece that I didn't list here that I should have, that I do want to mention in terms of addressing this regression, is many of our teachers also put some resources on Schoology at the end of the year that are still there and still available that families can access over the summer and work on. So, we do have some mechanisms in place between what's in Schoology, the summer resources, and the Tips Live opportunity to try to help our kids, try to mitigate that regression, as I said, as best we can. So let me pause there for a minute and see if anybody has any questions about some of the things that we're doing to try to address this potential pandemic plunge over the summer.
Dr. Winters, I just have one question. You have the plan for yellow and green. I know we all hope and pray it's not a red, but was yellow where they were still going to be all distance learning, and so there's not a difference then between the red and the yellow?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, Dr. McClendon. I was going to talk about that a little bit, with one of the other bullet points, but basically, as a point of kind of clarification, yellow is kind of that blended or hybrid model where if we're in yellow, it's probably going to mean either alternating days or maybe some grade levels online and some grade levels face to face, and there there are more restrictions with it because the number of people that can be together, are limited. Now, and I'll ask Dr. Phillips to clarify if I misspeak here, but my understanding is that, what the governor has put out is that schools can return, if we're in yellow or if we're in green, but the limitations in terms of what we can and can't do are different based upon those colors. Is that correct, Dr. Phillips?
You are correct. At this point, yellow is 25 people in a gathering. Green is 250 in a gathering. But you are correct.
Okay. So, we can still resume some face-to-face instruction if we're in yellow when August rolls around, but it's going to look, very different. Now, if it's red, if we end up getting back in red, then it's full on online, just like we were at the end of the year. Yellow creates some hybrid elements, and then green, allows us to bring, all the kids back with, some of those, plans in place that we'll get into.
And I would add that in the yellow and the green, there are some still social distancing issues, as well as masks and so forth.
Correct. Any other questions about addressing the regression or, pandemic plunge that we're all aware is going to occur? I guess the last thing that I'll mention, related to that is, as I think many people on this call are aware, there's CARES Act money that has been awarded to districts. Exeter's grant award from the federal government is just over $350,000. One of the things that you can use CARES money for is you can use it for resources, digital resources that can help support instruction, regardless of what color phase we may be in to start the year. And we have had some conversations as a teaching and learning team. And I realize that may be a new term. When I say teaching and learning department, I'm talking about myself, Melissa Devlin, Andy Wallach, Joe Way, and our three coaches, Missy Dow, Karen D'Annunzio, and Dan Wilczek. But we've had some conversations internally about what kinds of resources were really beneficial to teachers during the pandemic, and then figuring out how we can put some of those funds towards ensuring that we have those resources moving forward, because they'll be beneficial no matter what color we're in. Things like Screencastify and Edpuzzle, and some looking at some other math fluency resources and those kinds of things. So again, that's something else. And what's nice about all of the resources that are on that document is, by not collecting devices, then we really increase our likelihood that a larger number of children will take advantage of, being on those devices. And, we've already been in conversation with the IT department, as I said, about if kids need additional Chromebooks, making them available. And even if internet, potentially becomes a challenge, seeing what we can do by way of hotspots, because we don't want technology to be a barrier for kids to be successful. A second area in terms of thinking and brainstorming as we head into next year is the instructional piece. So what does instruction look like? What kinds of things do we need to consider? And, one of the things that, you heard Dr. Phillips say often over the past couple of months, and I've echoed it as well with conversations I've had with people, is that, we tried to take a very humanistic approach toward the pandemic over these past couple of months, really recognizing that, we had children that may have been home for a portion of the day, by themselves because one or both parents were essential employees where they worked and had to continue work, recognizing that our teachers, many of them had young children at home, so they were trying to be teachers at home and also teachers of their own children. And as many of us on the call can attest to, teaching your own kids is very, very different and much harder than teaching somebody else's. And so, there were challenges there. So we were purposefully very flexible in terms of what we expected of kids and what we expected of teachers. You know, we created a schedule that allowed for a lot of flexibility. We didn't have real rigid office hours like some other districts did. We didn't say the school day is 8 to 3 and kids need to be online for 6 hours a day, like some districts did and like our cyber charter schools do. You know, we and that was on purpose. You know, there was a very distinct reason for doing that, because we wanted to be, you know, understanding of the fact that the pandemic was going to impact a lot of people and a lot of families in a lot of different ways. But one of the things that we have learned over the past couple of months, as we've surveyed teachers and as we've gotten some feedback from the community, and we're still working on getting a larger survey out to get feedback, is that we've heard things like teachers were amazing, and they were phenomenal. But people, you know, have asked, you know, can we add some more structure? You know, can we create some commonality? You know, can we ensure that if you're in a grade in one building, that what that looks like has some similarity for those grades in other buildings? You know, can we just bring some structure to it in general? So one of the things that we've talked about is that if, you know, if we're in red or even if we're in yellow, that whatever kind of online programming that we have to provide next year, we need to add some structure to it, you know, in terms of several different items. One thing is that commonality piece. We want to make sure that what we have online is a grade, to use as an example, is a grade 2 curriculum for Exeter Township School District, not an Awatin Creek grade 2 curriculum, a Jackson Wald grade 2 curriculum, and a Lorraine grade 2 curriculum. So that commonality is important. The same with subject areas. One of the things that we've brainstormed about at the elementary level is the idea of checklists, recognizing that it might be very helpful to elementary families if at the beginning of a week they could see a checklist. This is what's due this week. By the end of the week, this is what needs to be accomplished. And if you have this, then you know, thinking that may be helpful. That's something we've talked about. In the engagement realm, we've talked about having essential questions or objectives or I can statements as part of the Schoology courses. We've talked about making sure that in the activities, there are ways for kids to engage prior knowledge. We've talked about opportunities to let kids explore, and then also the explanation piece, what we might call direct instruction in a traditional setting. Everything we did during the pandemic was asynchronous, meaning it wasn't happening live. It was stuff that kids could do watching a video later or watching something recorded or just doing an assignment that didn't require, you know, direct online interaction with a teacher at the moment. We had some teachers that did some great synchronous videos. It wasn't something that we set as a universal expectation. One of the things we've been discussing heading into next year is the need for some expectation around some synchronous learning opportunities. That'll look very different by grade level. You know, how many synchronous opportunities we can expect a kindergartner to participate in over the course of a week looks very different from what we can expect a senior to participate in. But ensuring that some of those are built in is going to be important. Making sure that there's opportunities for application and also for assessment, formative and summative and different kinds of assessments, tests, quizzes, essays, projects, those kinds of things. We're going to need to take a look at our time. One of the very real threats, and I call it a threat because it is, heading into next school year, is the cyber charter schools. Because we know that there will be families that will have concerns, even if we're in green, and even if the guidance is that, you know, kids can come back to school, we have a health and safety plan in place, we're going to take all of these steps. There may very well still be some families that still say, I really would feel more comfortable if my child was not in the building. I want to continue online. So we need to make sure that what we're building in the district is not only as good as, but better than what a cyber charter school can provide, because otherwise there is the threat that we could lose people to cyber charters, and we don't want that to happen, because I believe, and I know wholeheartedly, that what we can offer here and what our teachers can provide is light years better than anything that a cyber charter is going to put out there. And so we need to make sure that our structure, defined office hours, due dates, attendance, digital resources we use, all of those things, that they are things that are defined and structured, so that our families have what they need. So let me pause there. That's a lot of information to process, I know. I just want to see if anybody has any questions, concerns, thoughts about anything I mentioned related to common instructional expectations.
Well, if no one else has a question, what you said about the charter schools, Exeter can provide a better education, but also it costs more for students to go to charter schools, and we already have a very tight budget this year, so that's another thing, for parents to keep in mind. But and I don't know if you have the answer to this. We talked about this at our last couple of curriculum meetings about the students who were not accessing the work. And I remember Dr. Haller, she was down to a month or so ago, she was down to maybe just 2 students that they hadn't reached. And I do appreciate that, principals, administrators, counselors, teachers, everybody was working really hard to reach all the students. But were there still students at the end of the year that had not, logged on? And if so, like, what would be the plan if you're in this hybrid yellow phase to make sure that we are reaching every individual student?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that at the elementary level, and all, including Rifton, by the time the year was over, the number of kids that fell into that category that you were talking about was very small. There were a few, and every building principal was doing what Dr. Haller was doing. They were making phone calls, they were involving the school counselor, teachers were, on them. They were really putting a push, to try to get them, connected. That was a bit of a, more of a challenge at the secondary level. I think, when kids hit junior high, senior high, they get a little bit older, motivation becomes a little bit more of a challenge. I think that, if we're in, a red or yellow phase where we have, online, as part of what we're doing, I think we absolutely are going to need to take a look at attendance. I think that's something, because the way that we handled attendance in the spring, and again, I believe it was the right way to do it for the situation that we were in. We looked at it, on a weekly basis. And, as I've dialogued with some other districts and some different ways folks did attendance, a lot of districts did it daily. There was some type of login or check-in daily to ensure that a child every day was getting in. And so I think that's something we can look at. I think also if we add more structure to what an online learning day looks like, then, I think as a result of that structure, some of those pieces are going to, kind of tease themselves out. We kept it much more fluid and kind of open, trying to recognize the different, needs of kids. But, if it's structured in such a way where there are very explicit checklists in terms of what kids need to complete over the course of a week, and they know that there are live lessons that are happening on certain days, but that they're recorded as well, that they can then watch them at a different time if that's what works for the family. I think there are opportunities there that can help with that. And really, along with that, even if we provide some more structure, the guidance coming out of the state is still going to require districts to continue to be flexible to an extent. So it's really kind of achieving that balance between the two. And any other questions about that item?
Question. I don't know what's about this item. If the timing's off, just let me know and I'll wait till we're closer to the end. But I'm concerned about, and I'm glad to see you recognizing again what CNN called the double whammy of the summer slide along with the COVID-19 slide. And the question I guess I have is, how well equipped are we at the building level, the grade level, from 30,000 feet and from 6 inches away to measure the effect on each student of this double whammy, the COVID-19 slide and the summer slide? What kind of yardsticks are we going to use to assess each student's progress or lack of progress, however it may play out?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question, Mr. Fiddler, and I mean there are kind of a couple of pieces. With the academic piece, one of the biggest tools that will help us with that is the STAR assessments, and being able to do a baseline at the very beginning of the year to help us determine how far away a child may be from being on grade level to enter the year. I mean that's going to be that, and I would say recognizing that at the beginning of the year, as we take a look at curriculum, what is being taught, and those kinds of things, recognizing that there's probably going to have to be some embedded review and reteaching at the beginning of the school year, whether we're doing it online or whether we're back in the classroom. But I think the combination of doing that and also using the STAR assessment, and some of the other assessment tools that we use. So for example, we use Fountas and Pinnell as a literacy assessment. Ms. Wallach is working with math teachers in grades 3 through 6 to develop some common math assessments this summer that'll be ready to go for next year. So that will help us determine on the academic side. I think the bigger challenge is how do we determine the mental health impact that this pandemic may have had on certain kids, either because somebody in their family was diagnosed with COVID-19 or because they knew somebody who might have passed away, or simply because their house was much more stressful. While I don't have any data to back it up, I've been concerned throughout the pandemic of, are we going to see increased instances of, just kind of child abuse, family discord, et cetera, just because of how stressful the pandemic could have been on families, in general. I think that's the harder one to try to measure. It is to determine, how much have our kids been impacted by that. I know it's something that our school counselors are very mindful of. They're doing some work over the summer around social emotional learning to try to be prepared. We have also, in looking at both our ESSER funds and also the money that we get through the PCCD, Pennsylvania Commission for Crime and Delinquency. There it is. It's drawing a blank. Which is kind of through the Act 44. That's the safety stuff. We've talked about potentially using some of that grant money to maybe fund an additional mental health worker, even if it's just for 1 year, to try to help with that, or additional psychologists, because we recognize that maybe more evaluations, may become necessary. So I think that social emotional piece is going to be a whole lot harder to measure, but it's not any less important. It's just as important as the academic. It's just, fortunately, with academic, we have curriculum, we have assessments that we can take a look at that kind of, provide a guide for us. So that's the best answer I have at this point. I'll certainly know more when the school year starts, but.
No, that's a good answer. It addresses my question. That was my biggest concern. When are the STAR assessments administered?
So we typically, in past years, we've done them after Labor Day, in like second, third week of September. As a teaching and learning team, we're going to need to talk about that. I know from my perspective, I think heading into this school year, I think as soon as we can, feel like we can administer them and kids can do them, I think we should try to bump that timeline up, because I think, we don't want to wait. We want to get a baseline as soon as we can. But we have kindergartners that, do an assessment, and we've got 4th and 5th graders that do an assessment, and the readiness is, different developmentally based on where those kids are. But, we'll definitely try to do it as early in the year as we can.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. The
Dr.
next
Winters,
item, I'm sorry.
this is Dave Hemberger. I just had a
Yeah.
real quick question.
Sure.
I'm thinking about kids coming in as new kindergarten students and how unusual of a transition or situation this is going to be for them. Is there anything that we're doing for them and for other kids who are transitioning from, let's say, one building to another? Is there anything we've kind of thought of or we're planning to kind of make those their entry or re-entry a little smoother?
Yeah, actually, Dr. Hamburger, I know that Mrs. Devlin is on the call and she has been working very closely with our kindergarten team and our elementary principals in terms of kindergarten. So I'm going to defer to her and let her provide some clarification on that question.
Great,
Melissa?
thank you.
Hi, sure. So we really looked at all of the content of all the information that would have been provided to families at the pre-K or the kindergarten forum, that kids would have done hands-on activities at the kindergarten carnival as part of the spring into STEM event, and then the pre-K visits that would have happened in early May, where they would have gotten a chance to meet teachers and see a tour and meet the nurse and meet the counselors and meet the principals. So with all of that in mind, we've had to really kind of throw the cards up and rethink how all of that's going to look. So there's kind of a twofold plan happening. I've been pushing out some content for our families as they're registering with kind of the information for parents, just how to get ready with routines for kindergartners, how to, practice opening your lunches, little things that can be done without needing to go anywhere under lockdown conditions, without supplies, without materials, without any cost. The next series will be about talking about how to ready your child in terms of some of those social skills and some of those cognitive skills and how to build curiosity and how to help kids ask questions. So I'm kind of working on that side on the back end. But then we took what had previously been about a 2-week opportunity to bring in some of our kindergartners that after screening, we saw some concerns. And we've shifted the idea of bringing a small group of kindergartners in for a short period of time to building content with all of our kindergarten teachers, reading and intervention specialists, and instructional coach all working to build what is now the Kindergarten Academy. We have a series of 8 sessions that will be pushed out starting this week, with the first one's about I think it's writing your name. And so we talk about things you can do to practice writing your name and some videos that we share and songs to do, and then things parents can do and some resources to back that up. Every week from now through August, there will be a session provided that's really kid friendly and that allows a parent to sit alongside with a child at any time of day. It's going to be, YouTube videos, so it can be accessed from any device. And we've really been trying to make sure that we can get our kindergartners as ready as we can, knowing that even when they, if we are walking into a face-to-face scenario, everything's going to look so different. And, teachers with masks on, it's going to feel overwhelming. And so the more we can do to worry less about determining where they are and just start teaching and just get those kids into school and understanding, what some of the routines are, especially considering that even for our kindergarten teachers, those routines are going to look really, really different than they ever have before. So we're working really hard on the kindergarten piece. We've been meeting regularly, and those teachers the first content is already built to go out this week. I'll be pushing that out. I'll put it on the Exeter, all of the district websites and Facebook pages, and then also we can mail it directly to all of our registering or registered kindergarten families as well to get that out. We'll add it to Exeter Cares. We'll add links to, the Exeter Moms page, whatever we need to get that information out to people. So we've been working really hard because that's our population I think we worry the most about in this. Our other kids have seen school, they've seen transitions, they'll be okay, we'll get them through it. It's those kiddos who have never seen school that, this is going to be big for them. So
Yeah, I agree. And I think some of the, probably even encounter some degree of anxiety and fearfulness and some resistance on the part of kids, because it'll be, they're being thrown into the situation in a much more abrupt way than they would have under normal situations. So I think this is the population that I agree. They've had no experience with school and a brand new situation to them, and all the fearfulness in our society right now. They're sort of barely, maybe partially understand what's going on right now. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. And all that anxiety, I think, builds up to, what I hope will not be major problems for kids coming to school.
Yeah, and that's why I think it was important for the kindergarten teachers to provide as much of that content as possible. So they're meeting their teachers, they're meeting faces. They'll get to see the nurses and the counselors. And then the final
right.
video that will go out to parents will be once we know what all the plans are for reentry and we have a better sense by August of whether we're green or yellow or red. The principals will do the final one around school entering and safety and security and give parents and families a little room to breathe around, what that's going to look like and sound like for those families.
Thanks for your
So
work. Thanks for your work on that. Sounds great.
it's been a great effort with a big team. So I thank all the people who've been helping with that too.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to those people too.
Thank you, Mrs. Devlin. Any other questions about common instructional expectations before I shift to PD for a minute? So in terms of professional development, as we're thinking about and kind of preparing for next year, there's really two pieces. And, one piece is, as we think about those first 2 days of school, when teachers come back, that's going to have to look different. Because one of the things that we have to recognize is that whether, if we're in the yellow or the green, chances are it's going to be one of those two. We're going to have some students in the building. And so our teachers, all of our staff are going to need training in all the new safety precautions. How do you appropriately clean desks, in between kids coming in and out, like just all of the different guidance related to, what does it mean to be a teacher in a classroom with a number of kids, in that color as part of a pandemic, which is going to be something brand new for everybody, who wears masks, who doesn't, just all those different kinds of pieces. And so we're going to need to do some training at the beginning of the year for everybody, all employees around that and what all of that will look like. But prior to that, over the summer, this is the time when our teachers are taking advantage of flex professional development options. Teachers, as part of the collective bargaining agreement, are given the option every summer to either do their flex professional development over the summer, or wait and come in during the flex PD days that are built into the calendar and do it then. One is the Monday after Thanksgiving, the other is the Friday of President's Day weekend. But the vast majority of our folks do it over the summer. And so right now, we have teachers that are doing any number of different things related to flex. Mrs. Devlin talked about kindergarten. Kindergarten has a very elaborate plan that they're working through to make sure that they're prepared for next year. Every grade level and subject area has been given that opportunity, and many of them are figuring out ways to come together to do some of that work. We've got, some folks that are doing training that's very specific to their role, like the nurses. Many of our nurses are doing training this summer as part of Flex PD to learn how to be prepared to be an effective nurse amidst a pandemic. And so all of those, pieces, it's all part of the training. We're leveraging our coaches. And so, as we get closer to August, we may very well have to, implement some required training that, more directly involves Dan and Missy and Karen. We've also told our grade level representatives and our department chairs that, as they're doing work over the summer, they should reach out to our coaches to be involved in that, to offer support, just like they should reach out to Andy or Melissa, depending on which one has which department supervision in terms of getting support there. So we're trying to put all those mechanisms in place. This is a challenging summer to do professional development because, I think if there's one thing that all of us that have been, doing work online for the past 3 months have realized, it's that, functioning effectively as an educator or an administrator online is very challenging. And it was very new for all of us, and created some stressors and some, time commitments that I don't think anybody fully understood until they got well into it. And so we're trying to balance the summer in such a way so that teachers have an option to do flex PD, but to also allow them to just wait and do it in November and February if they choose, knowing that some of them may just need a break. And that's not a terrible thing, because, it was, very, very challenging over the past 3 months, and, and our teachers collectively as a group did a very nice job. Any questions about professional development and where things stand as far as that goes? Okay, and then the last item that I wanted to mention related to this thinking and brainstorming about instructional preparations is the idea of parallel programming. It's going to be really important as we start meeting as a task force in July and moving forward, that we consider not only what education will look like if we're back in the building, but even if we are back in the building, what can we offer as a parallel option completely online for families that may want to do that? I think we're going to need to be flexible, and I think we're going to need to be able to offer both, because there are going to be situations where it's just, because perhaps there's a medically fragile parent living in the home, whatever the reason may be, there may be reasons why some of our families may continue to need an online curriculum. So planning parallel for both what it'll look like in person and also online is going to be important. And so that's why those common instructional expectations that I talked you through not only are important if we're in a traditional setting, but they're important in an online setting as well. And so as that task force comes together and as those subcommittees, break out, one of the things I know teaching and learning will be talking about is the idea of parallel programming, and how we can make sure that we're offering both. Any questions about that? Okay, as we come to the end portion of the meeting, before I get into focus areas, I just wanted to take a few minutes and thank some folks. Wanted to thank Marianne Gibney. She's my administrative assistant. She's been attending these meetings. She takes minutes for us, gets those minutes out, and very much appreciate her willingness there. I want to thank the teachers and administrators that sit on this committee, Tiff Mell, Andy Wallach, Melissa Devlin, for your work and what you contribute to making this a successful committee, as well as all the other building administrators that attend these meetings throughout the year. Many of them are on the call right now. I want to thank our board members, not only the three that sit on this committee, Dr. Hemberger, Dr. McClendon, and Mrs. Wilson, but other board members who have consistently attended meetings throughout the year, Mr. Fiddler, Dr. Herring. There have been others. Really appreciate your support coming to these meetings, asking good questions, helping support the work of the district, and Dr. McClendon for serving as chair of this committee and helping to lead us. I appreciate that. And lastly, I want to thank Dr. Phillips. As many of you know, this is his last curriculum committee meeting, and want to thank him for his support, not only of me, but of this committee, and for his service to the district. I appreciate that. And I've enjoyed working with you, Dr. Phillips, over the past several years. So thank you. Thank you to all of you. This has been a great committee to work with, and I look forward to what is in store for next year, which is a good segue into the next area. Wanted to talk just very briefly about focus areas. So I think, when you come to the end of a year and you think about the next year, immediately my brain went to, as a curriculum committee, what do we want to focus on as we head into next year? And sometimes I think in education, not always on purpose, we inadvertently complicate things. We try to bite off too much, or, we try to make things more challenging than what it needs to be. And when I really break things down and I look at the data, to me, when I head into next year, it's really pretty simple. It's literacy and math, and what do we need to do to get 100% of our kids at a proficient level in those areas. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And so, you know, as I think about next year and the work of this committee, it's going to center around what do we have to do to try to get our kids to 100% proficiency in literacy and math. Because, you know, right now in the area of literacy, our highest scores are in the 70s. That's, you know, if we're looking at letter grade averages, that's a C, which is considered average. And in math, our highest math scores are in the 60s, and that's a D. And that's not an indictment of our teachers or anything of the sort. It's what the data is. It's what it says. And I don't believe for a minute that it's an issue of people. I think we've got amazing administrators, and I think we have amazing teachers. I think it's taking a look at the system in terms of, you know, what we do for literacy, what we do for math, in terms of curriculum, in terms of instruction, in terms of scheduling, in terms of resources, in terms of how we focus. It's taking a look at all of those things collectively and figuring out how to move the needle. So next year, as we get into, you know, curriculum committee meetings, a lot of my focus is going to be working with Dr. McClendon to try to figure out what kinds of topics do we want to discuss at curriculum committee meetings that will help us move the district further along the continuum of getting our literacy and math scores to 100%. So I think sometimes simpler is better, and I think in this instance, I think that applies. So just wanted to see at this point, does anybody have any questions either about focus areas or anything in general before we adjourn the meeting?
Yeah, I have a follow-up to that. I think it's great that the committee will focus on that, but is there going to be a separate initiative? You know, call it whatever you like, maybe the Move the Needle initiative, a working group that's being put together, because this is the issue that brought me to my decision to run for the board, was the math scores for our poor little third graders in 2018 who were scoring below 40%. I remember coming to the October public forum in 2018, and it really hasn't gotten much better now that I'm on the board. So is there going to be a separate initiative besides the work of this committee to get to the root cause of this problem?
Yes. So, you know, one of the things that I guess is good about the timing of this focus is that we have a comprehensive plan for the district that is due in the latter part of next school year. And so, you know, all of this work ties directly into the comprehensive plan and goals and, you know, strategic planning, you know, with new superintendent coming on board. So, I mean, really, you know, I mean, I always hesitate to say, you know, a new initiative, because, you know, sometimes, you know, districts can suffer from what I call initiative indigestion. You get so many different initiatives out there that then you become mediocre at all of them and not great at any of them. You know, I think more so than an initiative, it's more a, you know, a large district goal that the comprehensive plan focuses on and that the district focuses on as a whole, you know, coming out of the, you know, teaching and learning department, just in terms of what do we have to do to get those scores there, because it has overlap with so many different areas. You know, it overlaps our scheduling, it overlaps what instruction looks like, it overlaps with what resources we use. All of those things factor in, and it's much bigger than, you know, just myself or, you know, just district administrators. You know, it's a conversation and it's planning that involves teachers, you know, that involves, you know, board members through committees, that involves you know, building principals and assistant principals. So it's kind of a larger, you know, broader focus. But the account plan, I guess, if you want an initiative or strategy type, I mean, that's really the one.
Thank you.
Yep. Anything else? Well, thank you all for a great meeting. Thank you for your time and diligence and dedication to this committee over the past year. And, I hope you all have a wonderful summer and that, you enjoy the break in July, and we'll look forward to getting back together again in August. And for those of you that participated tonight via, live stream, thank you for listening. And, if we continue to be in Zoom next time we meet in August, I hope you'll continue to participate in the meetings that way. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.